All right, we're here on the Schmearcast. I am rejoined by Dan Monahan of Real Takes and the Goodwill Podcasting Podcast. Dan, we're without Sean Byrne today. He is busy becoming a father. Really weird understanding of priorities for him that he doesn't want to talk about Andor, but we'll just roll with the punches. We miss you, Sean. Congratulations. But come on, the best show on TV is airing right now. No, I'm kidding. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good. I watched these episodes a couple nights ago, and I fucking love them, and I can't wait to talk about them. But I want to start with a few thoughts about last week's trio of episodes. So a clarification. It seems that Luthen gave Andor and Bix the Gorst mission. I thought perhaps that they went against him and rebelled within the rebellion, but it's clear a few days later after the fact, and it's sorry on us that we got swept up in the moment, but we hear that Lonnie finds out about the Gorst program, must have given that information to Luthen, who fed it to Bix and Andor to give them something to get back out there, get back into the rebellion. So I wanted to clear that up.
No, that all makes perfect sense. I mean, the show is convoluted is the wrong word, but there's so much like nuance and detail, and you really have to pay attention. Like, I feel like we all at some point miss something or misinterpret something. It's so easy to do. So
rich and layered.
Yes.
The other thing I want to get your take on is there is a little bit of I think everyone loved these episodes, but if there was one sticking point or controversy, it was the rearing of the ugly head of the bury your gays trope. Bury your gays means the killing of gay characters for emotional impact. And in Andor, it's referring to Cinta being killed in the heist in Gorman. Now, I get the trope. It's a bad trope, but my pushback there, even though it is true that she is gay and she does die, is that like characters die in Andor all the time. And if it wasn't that show and this was like the first death in the rebellion, I would wave the flag and say that's not right. But I think the show has taught us that everyone can die at any moment, and acts of heroism come with sacrifice and death. And so it just didn't bump for me. I'm curious if you have any thoughts there.
I think people might feel like it's hard because, they just had like a kiss, which I don't know why that's a big deal in 2025, but apparently like it is a big deal, like to just show that, I guess, in Star Wars. So I feel like maybe coming so close on the heels of something like that finally happening, people might feel some type of way. I don't think it's something where I would dismiss it. I also don't think it's something where I would bury the show for it. Tropes might be buried in writers' head in a way that's even subconscious. Like you just might do something. I don't think it's anything malicious. I don't think they're, just, something for people writing stuff in the future to keep in mind, I guess, and pay attention to.
Right. So I'm curious how you feel about this batch of episodes 7 through 9. Again, we don't know the episodes' titles even yet, but how'd you feel about this batch?
Episode 7, I think, was probably the maybe weakest episode I've seen in this season. And I'm not even saying that in a way that I didn't enjoy it, but I think just not much happened, relatively slow, looking a lot at Cassian and Bix and kind of setting up for the next episode, which is going to be obviously massive in Gorman.
Mm-hmm.
A necessary episode, I guess. It just, like we talked about last week, sometimes it's going to happen. Episode 8 is just, I mean, you watched it too. It's a lot. I think we were kind of talking last week about, what are we building up to on Gorman, and like what are we going to see here? There's going to be some type of like genocidal event essentially, and that's pretty much
got it.
Yeah, pretty much what we get. The way it was built up, the first maybe 15 minutes of that episode, it felt a little bit in the same vein of episode 7, like moving very slowly, but it was purposeful once again. And just seeing the Empire in that mode, I think really works and really drives home the point that the rebellion is not just, it's quite necessary. I like seeing the necessity of it and how urgent it is. And you see that people are actually really, truly suffering and just under the boot. So I thought that was really, really strong. Episode 9, we really kind of get a focus back onto Mon Mothma and the political aspect here. And I think seeing the response from the media and the way it's immediately spun into an uprising, insurrection, terrorism, blah, 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 is really just very fitting and very realistic. And then I think seeing Mon Mothma just being who she is and standing in the face of that and leading up to that speech was just spectacular. And the amount of work it takes just to get that done, and also understanding what's going to happen to her immediately after, and the both sides kind of jockeying to respond to, the speech they know is inevitably coming. Really good. Really good stuff.
I'm pretty much in step with you. I thought episode 7 was shaky, and actually agree it could be the worst of maybe the season. But episode 8 was cinematic, very hard to watch, like a difficult episode, but an important one, maybe the most important thing Star Wars has done in its run as a franchise. And then episode 9, I mean, we'll get to that speech for sure, but I just thought it was like pure pleasure, like the staging of the exfiltration of Mon Mothma was so just purely satisfying. And I loved last week's batch of episodes. I think I like this one's even more. I need some help sorting through this, but there's some pleasure and some pain in knowing that the ending of the show and Andor's story, we know the wrap-up. It is Rogue One. And that movie's very successful, and it's awesome, and I can't wait to watch it once I finish Andor. On the other hand, that takes some mystery out of the equation. I'm curious if you're feeling that similar tension.
I think I hear what you're saying to an extent. I think the mystery of the show is in and we kind of touched on this last week, the amount of variables that are unaccounted for, the amount of unknowns that are in the mix here in regards to Luthen and Bix and really everyone else, like all the small bits and pieces here, even on the Empire side with Dedra and Cyril. Like, there's a lot of stuff up in the air. So I think there are enough like unknown variables that it still, holds your attention. And we saw, some big...
we got some answers in this
batch,
for sure. All right, so let's talk about them. Episode 7, we won't spend too much time on this one. It was notable that just seeing the Rebels getting their shit together a little bit. This is 1 year after the events of the last batch of episodes. We're reintroduced General Draven, played by Alistair Petrie, who was in Rogue One. Just to see Yavin and to see the ships they have and the guns they have, and just to know that, okay, we're prepping for war, and this is not just a little in-shop resistance, like literally in Luthen's shop. Like, this is now expanded, and it also is showing that, this schism or divergence between Luthen's work that was so in the shadows and small, and this, which is a much more forward-facing, larger aspect of the rebellion.
Yeah, I think it felt a tiny bit jarring with that jump forward in time, and like seeing like Yavin 4 and like seeing the rebel base there that you kind of feel like you recognize from the OG movies. I think it felt a little bit strange, but if you're someone who's looking for a little bit of hit of nostalgia, I think that would be nice to see. Like you said, I think you're seeing kind of more organization, and you're seeing maybe the establishment of ranks. You have people just giving orders, people taking orders. You see some of the conflict with Cassian still being someone who probably thinks he knows best and wanting to function as a more of like a rogue agent, and having to kind of push back against now this organization and say, yeah, I'm still going to do my thing. So like, you can deal with that, or you cannot. So I think that was interesting to see.
On one extreme of that is Willman, or Will, and it's interesting to see him here so dyed in the wool, almost brainwashed from his time with Saw Gerrera. And he comes to Andor with another Luthen mission. And what you're saying is right, is that it seems like, and we don't learn that much more, but it seems like Andor has responsibilities to this base. And whether it's the training of troops, whether it's being there and being a more behind-the-scenes leader. And I'm sure that leads to some restlessness in him, because he wants to be in the action, but when you have newfound responsibilities, you got to kind of deal with that too.
Yeah, I think that's always, I think looking at that throughout history, I think it's really interesting seeing how people change in their roles in revolution, especially when it becomes a political movement, etc., something like that. I think like looking at someone like Michael Collins in Ireland in the 1920s, like he went from a on-the-ground insurgent, essentially, right? Like,
yeah,
basically IRA, into someone who had to be a political face, right? And then he had to start managing, we have this new nation. I'm going to try to do the best I can for them and like position myself. And then you get people that are saying you're not doing enough. You're getting away from who you were, like all that. So I think it's cool to see him probably maybe being looked at as like a leader, someone who probably shouldn't be putting himself in harm's way.
Right.
Because if you lose
that's the
you're more of a symbol, right? Like than a just a person that if he dies, he dies. So I think
to stay in Ireland briefly, it also reminds me a lot of Say Nothing. It's about the formation of the IRA and how it was fun and exciting and new at first, and then came with so much more responsibility, complication, complexity later on.
Yeah, you think I mean, I feel like at first you're just kind of going, and you're not thinking, and you're not planning, and you're just trying to react, and then it's
Right.
everything else that's you don't think about when it's just
Right.
man, I'm pissed off. Let's go do something. Like,
Yeah, and we'll definitely get to that when we talk about Mon Mothma in the 9th episode. So let's go to Gorman. So basically, Andor's mission is to assassinate Dedra. Why not? Someone who probably deserves assassinating from the Rebels' point of view. Gorman feels very different. It was sun-dappled and beautiful in the last set of episodes. Now there's an Imperial presence. There's a curfew. It feels like the life is just sucked out of this place. The square that was so buzzing and teeming with life is cold and empty. And we haven't even been in this place for that many episodes, but the contrast, I thought, was very notable.
Yeah, it feels very, very gray and very like dour. I think you kind of feel maybe some of the soul of the place is being sucked out, and maybe people are becoming more and more agitated, maybe losing some of their like culture, their joy. They seem like a very united, cohesive people that have like kind of a zest for life, and that seems to be kind of fading away. And I think you see, the Empire just continuing to execute their plan, like continuing to do what they wanted to do and do it efficiently and move towards their goal, which becomes more and more clear as we move along.
The perpetrator of that is Dedra, and I thought that the show did a unique storytelling trick here, which is that it establishes that the mission is to kill Dedra by Andor, but then obviously, like, next scene, we're in the room with Dedra to a humanizing effect, and we get that very weird but still human kiss with Cyril that was bizarre to watch, but felt like a showing of some realness from her. It's just a graying of things that I think Andor is so good at. That, like, yes, let's go kill Dedra, but oh wait, here we're seeing a side of her we haven't seen before, complicating things a bit.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if this will be true across the board, I hit a point in this episode where, like, I don't feel any empathy at all towards Dedra. Like, I don't feel anything. I don't think there's any type of meaningful redemption to be found or any type of meaningful connection there with this character. I think she's just fully kind of evil, and I think you really see Cyril be like, have the realization that I was hoping for, that we hadn't talked about. Like, he has a moment of like, what are we doing? Like, what is going on here? Like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, and I think everything with him in this episode is so good in regards to someone who maybe is just dumb, right? Isn't looking down the road, isn't looking at the big picture, doesn't have an understanding of what's being laid out. And then it was just like, I was a part of this. Like, holy shit. Which, again, in today's world, I think is great. And seeing that realization in his face was, I think, really powerful.
Right. I mean, we'll get to him a little later, but, like, I think Cyril loves Gorman. Like, he loves this country. And that's the conflict within him. He likes the fashion. He collects those spiders. You see them in his home. Like, he kind of is about this culture. And he's getting played in the larger spider web too.
Yeah, and they did adopt him in a way, and like they were kind to him, and I guess it got through to him on some extent, even though he was working
still
as an agent.
Information back. You mentioned something that you found interesting. I did too, which is the deployment of news and propaganda in this show, in this episode. Now, I guess we got that a tiny bit in the prequel series from George Lucas, but not really. Here, it's quite notable. You have like a liberal Star Wars news channel. You have a Fox News version of Star Wars. It really reminded me, I mean, there's so many examples from history, but like when the Nazis self-bombed the Reichstag and claimed that it was terrorist so that they could invoke martial law. Like, it is literally that to a T. The invocation of quote-unquote terrorists, that's what the Fox News of the galaxy keeps saying. These are terrorists, these are outside agitators causing all the problems, which is just a blatant lie.
What you said is dead on, and I think what it comes back to is, you mentioned there's kind of like maybe different spins on the news. All that stuff is part of the same machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all those things kind of eat from the same few hands. I mean, there's a couple, I think there's like 5 organizations that control all the news that we see. A lot of them worm their way down into the like local news as well. We are hearing, whether you consider it to be liberal or conservative, you're generally kind of hearing the same stuff. And it's all playing the game, right? And I feel like that's what we're seeing here. And I think what you just said about the Reichstag fire is, I was thinking about the same exact thing, because that's happened time and time again throughout history. I mean, there's, Pearl Harbor in and of itself, people think we knew that the Japanese fleet was going to attack us there.
And if you read about the history of the CIA and the amount of times we've armed, foreign groups to kill or terrorize their own country, it's just long and dirty
all
list.
The weapons that we gave to Afghanistan to use against the Russians, they ended up using against us. And, Kennedy vetoed a plan by the CIA to fake an attack by like Castro on U.S. citizens. Like, they proposed that to him, and he said no. Like, this is documented. You can go read it yourself. Like, I think people just don't understand sometimes like how dispensable we actually are in the eyes of the government, any government around the world. And I think this basically like false flag they put together here like shows that really, really well.
A scene that didn't work for me within this episode, I'm curious your thoughts, is this Force healer moment. Now, I don't think the Force has come up in Andor yet, but obviously it's so important to Star Wars. Andor has a pain in his back from a blaster burn. We don't get more information than that. This Force healer, it's a little spooky. It's the first of the Force, like I said, I can remember in this series. She says that she senses a clarity within him. And it's introducing the idea of Andor and destiny that I wasn't exactly on board with, because what I love about this show and this character is that he's just a dude. He's just a guy. We talked last episode about how much of a mercenary, how cynical he was in the first season. And it's his growth into a leader that feels real. But when she says this, I do think about him escaping from Narkina 5. Him being part of Aldani, everything that's happened this season. So on one hand, I get it. On the other, I'm kind of like keep that away from my Andor.
I didn't like the scene at all. I thought it was strange. I think it is interesting to tie into, the bigger Star Wars picture. That's not what I'm looking for with this show, but it does do that. It does show that there's something more, to the Resistance. Cool, but I think it comes down to maybe a conversation of like personal philosophy. Like, I'm not really someone that believes in, your fate or your destiny. Like, you make fucking choices. Yep. Make the right choice and then make another right choice and then make another right choice, and you'll end up where you're supposed to be. If you say, well, my destiny is going to find me someday, and you sit around and don't do shit, you're not going to do anything. So I think like the thing with Cassian Andor is like he's someone who is choosing difficult things over and over, and like maybe choosing them more freely and easily, and he will end up where he's supposed to be by making those choices in the face of adversity, not by, he has a death. Like, come on. That's just...
Yeah. My pushback would be that if it's true that Cassian is possessed by a greater force, I don't like that. But as an engine for Bix's understanding of belief and Cassian, I guess it makes a little more sense.
How so?
Well, I just mean like if it is informing how she feels about him and the decision she makes in the 9th episode, that works for me. But it being a true driver of Cassian, this fate, this force, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I think you can have what she does in the 9th episode as a response to the words that he says to her. Like, as just a human response to, I see the direction you're going because of me, so I'm going to react. I think it does make more sense to the audience and make it a little maybe more palatable and easier to explain from like a writing perspective, but I maybe would have preferred a little bit more of a challenge with that. But I see your point of view, absolutely.
I don't know if this ends the episode, but the last notable scene I want to shout out is the return of the bellhop that was in...
Your guy.
Oh, God. The 5th episode?
Yeah.
He's been promoted. He's at front of desk now. He's not a bellhop. Sorry. Excuse me. Andor's posing as a journalist. The bellhop, I'm curious, like, does he recognize him? It's the same guy. He's playing a role. He says that Andor, as this journalist, has to log his entry, and the stern, matronly co-desk lady walks away, and he whispers, "She will report you, but I'm not logging you in the system, but you will have to carry your own bag this time. You know the way." And I'm just like, nice.
Yeah,
He remembered him.
We talked about
good little moment.
Yeah, we talked about maybe him coming back in some way. I was glad to see him again, and he gets a little more action in this episode, so I thought that was good.
Stray notes from this episode: Mon Mothma not safe on Coruscant anymore, so something's brewing to get her out of there, which of course we'll get to. And I just want to note that the barrel-chested man has joined the Resistance fighters.
That shit made me more mad. Seeing him there, I was like, come on.